You know, it's a really easy explanation. When the rain comes down, it collects different minerals and different deposits from different rocks. And so the more that it runs off, the more it accumulates. After the precipitation of water rises up, it leaves those deposits down into that mass. And so the more runoff there is, the more salt there is at being heavy in the accumulation. And really, that's why the sea is salt. Why the Sea is Salt by The Gift. So The Gift is a London progressive rock band, and that is really felt on a lot of their works. This is the first one that I have had the pleasure of listening to. I haven't heard their first two releases of Awake and Dreaming as well as The Land of Shadows. And so we have the next release of Why the Sea is Salt. This was one of the albums that I was listening to while discovering new music. Within the past couple of weeks, I just dove into a plethora of new releases from bands of today. Some have been hits, some have been misses, and within The Gift, I find myself in a very strange place because I feel like both are felt on this. I wasn't feeling overly that connected with this album, even though the music that is being found on this album is a treat. It's quite pleasant. This type of progressive rock harkens back very much to that more of an acoustic approach to music. A lot of the driving force is an acoustic guitar or say like a flute or so, but that being said, there's still a plethora of very synthetic and meaty instruments such as the electric guitar and synthesizers and the like here. So within Why the Sea is Salt, the overall impression of this album for me is there's not a whole lot of new ground that's being tread on this album, and a lot of it is just what we've already been introduced to. We know what works, and so we're going to give it to them again. It's a really interesting kind of a mix here because although I love this style of music and I love this kind of optimistic progressive rock, here, because I'm very used to this kind of music, I feel like I need something more, and something wasn't quite jiving as much. Now, this album is getting some amazing reviews, and I feel like it does earn it. I feel like the musicianship found within this album, it does deserve that praise that it's getting, but it wasn't hitting me quite the same. Coming into the first song of At Sea, I like how the song really takes its time at developing itself. It doesn't just jump right in, it takes its time to build that atmosphere, and it really does feel like you're at sea. The playing between the almost grand piano, and I know it's not really a grand piano, but at least like that feeling of a grand piano, and you've got that great landscape of the sea overall, so I like how they structure that. And once we get into like say like the 3-minute mark, because the song is a little bit on the longer side, it does stretch into like say the 10-minute marks, and then once it actually does like come in with more of the electric guitars and the big booming of the song, in and around like the 3rd-minute mark, you're invested in the song at this time, and so you're really looking forward to this. And I do need to kind of address the lead vocals of Mike Morton, and I know that there's kind of harmonizing going on there, and the harmonizations are fantastic, but I feel like Mike never really puts himself into the vocals there. Like it's a great vocals and he's doing a great job and he does have the talent there, but I never really feel convinced with his presentation. And again, that's just me. That's not necessarily he's not giving that presentation. It's just I don't feel it. So the first song, it started off the album very, very well, but it really didn't leave a very big lasting impression. I feel like they overemphasized the atmosphere of the song and tried to develop some really meaty stuff going on there, but you compromise the song a little bit by putting too much effort onto the atmosphere and not enough on the substance of the song. And then we're ushered into the second song of Sweeper of Dreams, and this one feels very much like a single. It feels like they were almost going out of their way to produce a single. They were trying, a really meaty hook. They started off the song with a really big in-your-face guitar, and I don't know if it was just the sound quality, but something didn't quite jive very, very well with that. But it is the third song of Tuesday's Child that I kind of really enjoy. I do like more of the intimate atmosphere of the song, being just a kind of like a 12-string guitar and the lead singer. that I felt much more connected on. I liked how more genuine this felt. I felt like the first couple of songs, it was them almost going out of their way to produce songs that we had heard before, whereas this was a little bit more heartfelt. It felt more from a genuine place. And that really was ushered into The Tallest Tree, which is probably my favorite song off of this album. And the first couple of times I heard this song, I'm like, this sounds lifted right off of some demos that came from like an Anthony Phillips or an early Genesis feel. And then when I actually looked at some of the accreditations on this album, I feel like Anthony Phillips and Steve Hackett actually were on this song as well. And I felt like the band was using these guys' talent as like piggybacking off of their own instead of kind of like blending the sounds. It sounded very much like a cut from Anthony Phillips' Private Parts or something along those lines. I mean, in fact, I need to, there, okay, yeah, because it was so almost in your face, it almost brought me out of the song after a couple of listens. But then we come into all these things, the big track off of this album being that 20-minute piece, and here I didn't realize it was the 20-minute piece until I actually sat down and looked at it. I thought this song had a lot of starts and finishes, and it didn't feel like it had a unifying whole to really warrant the 20-minute mark. I feel like had they done what a lot of bands are doing today with these larger pieces, which is just cut them up and make different tracks out of it, I feel like they probably would have had a better piece at the end of the day. The album is brought to a close with At Sea Reprisal. This song does a really good way of, I guess, closing the album off, but it really doesn't really add anything to it, and it doesn't really leave a finality to it as well. It just kind of ends. So overall, even though this album's getting some really big praise, and in one hand I do respect that and I do see why it is, it didn't really land overly all that well with me. I was just left with wanting more, I suppose. But overall, I have to probably say stream this album if you can find it. This was a really hard album for me to find, but that's about it. That's all I've got to say. It was a good time while I was in it, but I am ready to move on to the next endeavor. So that's my take. What did you guys think of this album? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, let me know by commenting below. And thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.